I ran down that path, paying no mind to any foothouses that might trip me up or send me into a headlong stumble. The failing light of dusk barely lit my path, and it only added to the feeling of horror of what I had just witnessed. My feet slipped and skidded with every footfall. My heart pounded, and my lungs and body ached and burned from the supreme effort. And still, my pace could not be fast enough to carry me away and quell the terror that was clutching at my pounding heart. Driven on by the visage of that horror, I redoubled my effort impossibly at every stride until met by my own limits of human capability and endurance. And yet I strove onward in the encroaching darkness at that breakneck pace. I could not turn my head to look back. My greatest fear was that that thing would be on my heels and I would falter and it would overtake me. Mother of God, it's inconceivable that such horror dwelt within just a half a day's walking distance of normal everyday life. How did it hide away so effectively? How long had it been there? What in the devil's hell was it? My father, now passed away, bless his soul, told me a plantation was built on that very spot in 1865 by my grandfather, Colonel W.R. Boggs, soon after the Civil War. After my father passed, I inherited the house in St. Martinville and moved there from New Orleans. One day while rummaging around in the attic, I came across a reading table with some old newspaper clippings, photos, and my father's diary. The newspaper articles I found supported the claim of a plantation being built by my grandfather. Old-timers in the town of St. Martinville called it the Old Boggs Place, and it was built on the spot the Choctaws speak of in legends their ancestors passed down from the eldest of days. A few old-timers that remember the place call it the Devil's Bowl. According to the diary, Colonel Boggs was a man of high regard and considered a local hero during the war when he commanded the 1st Louisiana Regulars. After the war, he hired local emancipated Negroes, Creoles, and ex-soldiers to build and then later work the plantation. The plantation was destroyed and the site abandoned in 1872 after Colonel Boggs' untimely and mysterious demise. Rumors had it at the time that Colonel Boggs dabbled in strange unholy rites and black voodoo, spending many long hours poring through old tomes he had acquired during his campaigns. It was also rumored that these rites were bizarre and strange, even in a region steeped in voodoo, and the Negroes were nervous about it all, and they would be the first to leave the place. Soon to follow them were the Catholic Creoles. Some of the ex-soldiers, a handful of Colonel Boggs' most loyal boys, remained with him for a while, despite the rumors that old Colonel Boggs had turned quite mad. It was said among those that were close to Colonel Boggs that he claimed he was trying to contact some ancient being that had always dwelt in that very location. He tried enlisting the soldiers in the rights, and in time, one by one, they abandoned Colonel Boggs, all but for one sad fellow named James Dupree. Then one night, the last night, Dupree and Colonel Boggs were visited by an unnameable horror. In my father's diary, I read it was through the gibberings of Dupree that word came that Colonel Boggs was trying to open a gateway into another dimension on that night, and an indescribable horror was unleashed and smashed and tore the plantation apart. As he made his escape through the woods, Dupree said he saw old man Boggs wrapped up by tentacles being dragged back into the flaming ruins. Well, eventually the place was abandoned and in time became nearly a forgotten legend. The Boggs plantation site eventually became the property of the state, and being so near the swamps was swallowed up by thick woods and lost to memory. Being interested in the occult myself, and somewhat an adventurer, my curiosity was piqued, and I inquired around and managed to pick up some old tales and found some old maps in the local public library, and I felt certain I had pinpointed the location and decided to investigate. This morning I packed up some camping gear and prepared for a several-day excursion out into the swamps depicted on the maps. When I figured I was within a couple of miles of where I thought I needed to be, I set up my camp and spent the better part of the day roaming around the area, crossing shallow bayous and thick dark woods looking for any sign of the old plantation. It was late in the afternoon when I came upon an exposed bit of gravel road and followed it. Eventually, I came to an old cypress fence with a rather ominous posted sign. I knew I was on the right track and felt I was close, so I followed the road a ways more until off in the distance I saw a low hill covered in dense black forest. Forgetting the time of day, my curiosity got the best of me. As I approached, I became aware that the trees on the hill were dead and blackened, which I felt was very odd. After all these years, there should have been some new growth. Despite my growing sense of unease, I continued on, and through the trees I could see a dilapidated brick structure I assumed to be the outer building of the plantation. I had found it. Now my curiosity was unquenchable, and I pressed on despite the tingling down my spine that should have served as my warning. It's not that the ruins seemed out of place, it was the hill. The trees were dead as the grounds were all around it. The hill was all welled up, and I realized that I might be looking at a crater. This was unexpected, and of course it was a sight I had to see, so I climbed up to the rim to have a quick look before sunset. Murky, stagnant water pooled in the bottom with a mound in the center that itself looked like a small crater. The air stunk with an indescribable stench, and it was utterly gut-wrenching. Then I saw something rising up out of the muck of the small crater in the center, and what I witnessed there behind them old plantation ruins sent a chill down my spine, the likes of which I had not known since I was a small child, frightened by some imagined night terror. But this time, the terror was all too real. My eyes could not make sense of what they saw, and for a while I stood rooted to the spot, entirely impossible and alien. First, my feet would not give way to my rising terror, not until I heard from a great maw this bella that seemed to come from below my feet straight from hell. It moved, coming at me, reaching for me like some gigantic, writhing white maggot straight from the hell of some madman's nightmare. Fear itself a man can control, but what overtook me was a supernatural panic. I ran. Beyond fear, my entire being was spent in that mad dash. My throat clenched in a silent scream, my eyes wild with panic and loathing and horror that is quite beyond description. Fevered chills came coursing down my back unabated as I could swear I sensed a cold, fetid breath upon the very nape of my neck, bearing down on me with every stride. I stumbled forward frantically into loose gravel, carried only by my sheer will to run, never looking back. The pounding of my heart sounded in my ears and deafened me like it never had done before in my life. My heart bucked inside my chest and thudded painfully, and I could feel my head beginning to reel. And then something broke inside my head. Sparkling motes washed over my vision, and I blacked out for just a split second, and my body crumbled and skidded headlong in the gravels. My teeth and jaw shattered from the impact, and I choked on inhaled dust. I lay there, my body shuddered and jerked, while the strain from my exertions began to subside. But there was no more pain, only that deep riveting fear of the thing and compelling impulses to flee, firing nerve signals that my body tried in vain to respond to. Darkness began to overwhelm me, and the only sound was the pounding in my ears from my slowing heartbeat. The momentum of my fall twisted me around so that now I could see back upon the path I had just fled down. With my fading vision, I saw there was nothing behind me at all. There was little comfort in the fact that it would not be the method of my demise, except in a very ironical sense.